What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Clippers Latest, where we talk all things LA Clippers, quick, fast, and to the point. I'm your host with the most, Brandon Goggins, back here with another episode for you guys today. Special shout out to Underdog for sponsoring this video. How are we all doing today? I hope that everybody's doing absolutely fantabulously lovely. You know, ain't that how the Brits say it? I hope you're doing lovely, mate. Something like that. I don't know. I lived in London for a month though. I mean, if you cared, which I'm sure you don't. We got some stuff to talk about today. Yesterday was a busy day in the NBA, as you may have guessed, and as you can probably assume from what we'll be talking about. I mean, the trade deadline is approaching. I think that's the big elephant in the room, and teams are starting to scramble, trying to figure out what they're going to do. So, I think we're going to talk a little bit about that, but before we get into it, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're new here, and without further ado, let's get straight into it. Starting with, obviously, the elephant in the room. We've been talking about Trae Young trying to work his way out of Atlanta for a while now, and, you know, it finally happened. Trae Young is officially a Washington Wizard. After he was dealt for C.J. McCollum and Corey Kispert. I wasn't necessarily heartbroken by it. You know, I did obviously entertain the idea of Trae coming to LA, but when you really think about it, I just don't know how clean of a fit that would be, you know, especially next to somebody like James Harden. Offensively, sure, you know, there would be spacing, there would be, you know, more playmakers on the floor. Easy looks for Zubac, a healthy Derrick Jones Jr., even a reunion with John Collins. That would have been pretty cool, I guess. But defense, that's where I pump the brakes. Look, Trae, with all due respect, has been labeled as a cone, as in traffic cone, on defense for years. And unfortunately, that is something that people have said about Harden throughout his career as well. So having two high usage guards that can be targeted on the perimeter is just asking teams to cook us, especially with anybody that has proficiency in ball handling. What's interesting, though, is that C.J. McCollum was a name that we also talked about before. And honestly, if we're talking about fit, I kind of think would have been a better move for us, you know, if we were able to make that. It would have made more sense. You know, he's basically like a slightly older Norman Powell, if you think about it. You know, shot creation, spacing, experience. And then Corey Kispert, you know, he's a younger shooter with upside, especially like he's exactly the type of player that you would want on your team. Unfortunately, in the space of somebody like, you know, Bogey, you know, Bogey to Washington. No diss, Bogey, if you're watching this. I know you're not. Obviously, those options are off of the table now, but that doesn't mean that there aren't still some options on the table. You know what I'm saying? So with the deadline getting closer, trade rumors are obviously getting louder. Obviously, we just talked about Trae Young getting traded. You know, that's going to create a domino effect. There are about to be more moves that are going to be made. And one name that keeps on popping up on, at least on my feed and my timeline, has been Coby White. He hasn't been as flashy as some of the other names because there are a lot of big names on the market right now, but the buzz around him is real. And now the Clippers are officially in the mix. Brett Siegel from Clutch Points, he reported that the Bulls are fielding calls on Coby White with the Timberwolves, Mavericks, and Clippers all checking in. And from LA's perspective, I feel like it's something that just makes sense. You know, Coby, he brings some shot making, he brings some pace, he brings energy. Those are three things that this team desperately needs, in my opinion, and I feel like he fits a better timeline than a lot of this roster. Plus, he's in the final year of his deal, so that gives him a lot of flexibility if you want to think beyond just this season, if you want to, you know, continue your franchise with this player. So if the Clippers can get him without giving up too many of their main assets, I think it would be a huge win. You know, low risk, high reward type of upside. You know, I feel like it could be something that really works in our favor. Fast breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like points, rebounds, steals, more. You know what it is. Get your get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. This week on Underdog, I'm looking at Philly versus Orlando, and I'm gonna go ahead and take Tyrese Maxey for higher than 28.5 points. He's averaging 30 points, which I think that will get him an all-star selection this year. And sticking with Philly, I'm going to go VJ Edgecombe for lower than 2.5 three-pointers made. I think that Orlando's perimeter defense may be able to slow VJ down. He's been having an incredible rookie season, but I do think that 2.5 3-point. I think 3 threes is a little much for VJ, but maybe I'm hating. We'll see. But what I think you should do is download the app today, and when you download it, you should use promo code BasketballFan to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. Again, that is promo code BasketballFan. Underdog, make picks, win money. And we're actually going to stay on the topic of Underdog. Since we're on that topic, let's talk about the man of the hour, Kawhi Leonard. Because over the last 5 games, he's been on a very serious tear. Obviously, part of the win streak, he was going berserk, but he's still doing his thing. I mean, when you look at Kawhi from December 30th through January 7th, the biggest thing that jumps out to me is not just the point totals, but he makes it look so effortless. Like, he's a pure hooper. There's no forcing, no over dribbling, no rushing possessions. It's just Kawhi getting to his spots and doing what he's done his entire career. When you think Kawhi, what do you think of? That mid-range. That mid-range has been money. Free throw line jumper, bang. Turn around right over the shoulder. Patience when the defender bites, bang. It's all back. And when that part of his game is working, everything else opens up. The defenses have to respect it, and that leads to easier drives, cleaner kickouts to people like Batum, James Harden, John Collins, Bogey when he plays, and I feel like it's less pressure on everybody else on the floor. So over these last 5 games, you can also see his confidence growing. I feel like possession by possession, really. And early on, he was kind of feeling his way back in, picking his spots, not overextending because, he was coming back from the injury. But now, oh yeah, that boy is assertive. He's calling for the ball. He's attacking any mismatches. And most importantly, he's finishing through contact. I think that he has been looking amazing. I said that he's been playing his sharpest basketball of the last decade. Okay, the last half a decade. But you get what I'm saying. He's been hooping, man. You can't lie. And I think that's where the stat projection conversation comes in for Underdog. When Kawhi is playing like this, it's not just about points. You're looking at the complete stat line. I mean, points, rebounds, deflections, steals, even assists when defenses collapse on him. He can still swing that rock. And I think that if this version of Kawhi shows up next game, I fully expect him to be in that high 20s to low 30s scoring range again. And not in a who used to do this? I can't think of somebody off the top of my head, but not in like a take 25 shots to get 25 points type of way. I mean, taking 16 to 18 shots and still getting to that range, I think that's the difference between good scorers and great scorers. In my opinion, Kawhi is a great scorer. What I also love about this stretch from Kawhi is his defensive intensity. I feel like he's been locking in again. He's been fighting over these screens. He's timing his reaches, and he's not gambling. I know that some of the refs from last game, they, whenever you play the Knicks, it's I ain't going to say too much. Zebra, your favorite animal. You hear what I'm saying? But I feel like he's been more disciplined and locked back in terms of defense. So that tells me that his legs are under him again. And when his legs are there, his shot is there. And it just goes together like 2 peas in a pod. It's that simple. Another thing that I would say to watch is how comfortable he looks playing off of James Harden. When Harden is creating and Kawhi is finishing, the offense really, really, really flows. Kawhi doesn't have to carry every possession, which keeps him fresh late in the games, Obviously, in the game against the Knicks, it didn't pan out that way, but they still both had higher than 25 points, or they were in the mid to high 20s. You get what I'm saying? But that's huge if you're, projecting the stats not just for one night, but for a whole stretch. So when I'm looking at Kawhi for this next game, I'm expecting consistency more than everything. I'm expecting him to set the tone early, get his spots, close strong. And if he does that, I feel like the numbers are going to take care of themselves. And that's exactly the type of player that you would want to go with in this spot. So I don't think this is a hot streak. I feel like this is his rhythm. And when Kawhi finds his rhythm, history tells us that he tends to keep it for a while. So that's what I have to say about Kawhi. You ain't got to take my word for it, but hey, we'll see. So now, still staying on the topic of trade talks, let's talk about Malik Monk. A recent article was floating around kind of pointing to Malik Monk as a possible trade target for the Clippers, and honestly, I would have to say that I'm pretty intrigued. The article talks about how Monk is stuck in a losing situation right now with the Kings and how his role has been shrinking. But that doesn't change what he can still bring to the table. Monk is a bucket, certified bucket, pure scorer, bench spark, confidence through the roof. He knows when it's his time, you know? I feel like this team desperately needs bench scoring. And Monk could instantly change that. Like, he's not a project, he's not a young dude that hasn't really proven anything that, like, you're taking a gamble on. He's proven that he can get you 15 to 20 on any given night, and he can completely shift the momentum of a game. For the Kings, when De'Aaron Fox was still there and before they had traded for Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, I feel like Malik was finishing. He may not have been starting all those games, but he was finishing them, in like legit fashion. Like, he was coming in and he was not scared of the lights. The lights were not too bright for him. Like, and I think that that's the type of player with the type of confidence that we could really use on this squad. Personally, I think it would be a good move for us to do. No, not good. Great. It would be a great move for us to do. It would lower the pressures on the starters. And I feel like it would give us a whole new dimension off the bench. And I really think that we should take a chance on it if we are able to, because his value, because he's getting so little playing time and, limited minutes, I feel like his value is at an all-time low. So the asking price may not be too high. So I think that we need to jump on that. Lawrence, pick up the phone. It's not that far away. Sacramento is just a little bit around the block. So chop, let's make something happen, Lawrence. Come on. Speaking of making something happen, been talking about this a lot lately, and I'm not sure how to feel about it, but there has been an arising question that has come up ever since a particular individual rejoined us after his injury, and yeah. As far as making a move of our own, the front office has been clear that they don't want to be sellers. But that doesn't mean that other teams aren't calling. And as we've talked about, Ivica Zubac has drawn interest from both the Celtics and the Pacers, two teams that desperately need a reliable center, and I can't blame them, I think that depending on Garza, Keita, Isaiah Jackson, people like them, I'd probably be tripping, I think that Zoo, since he's been back, has been kind of struggling, I feel like his limitations may be starting to hurt us more than they're helping us. And I feel very bad in saying that because he's done so much for us, like he's been reliable, he's been consistent, he's done a lot that's positive, but he's not a floor spacer. He is not great when it comes to pace, and neither is Lopez, for what it's worth. But when the game speeds up, he becomes a target, and he's supposed to be the anchor of our defense, but like, I don't know, man. It's just really difficult. I don't really care for Garza, Keita, Isaiah Jackson. I don't care for any of them, to be honest. What is it, Jarris Walker? I don't really care for any of them. So I don't know if I would want to give Zoo away for them, but it's just been noticeable that like he hasn't gotten back to his best self yet, and I don't expect him to come right out of the gate and be awesome. I mean, he still had over 20 yesterday, but it's just very evident when it comes to pacing, and we're already a slow team, so like having a slower big, I don't know, it just kind of puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage, despite how much I love Zoo and what he's done for this squad. And look, I'm not saying that we just dump him. I'm not advocating for that at all. I'm just taking a look at the optics here. But what I will say is, if the right deal comes across the table, I feel like you at least have to listen. At the very least, especially when you're trying to balance the present with your future. Like if we get a younger offer with somebody that has like some upside, like an Alex Sarr or I'm not gonna say Nick Claxton, but like a younger big man that is very agile and can get up and down the floor, like you gotta look at stuff like that. But I don't know, man. Trade deadline is crazy. I really don't want to get rid of Zoo, but I also don't want to remain stagnant in a place of mediocrity. And if swapping that out and getting somebody that's faster but is still able to contribute on both sides of the ball, I think that we have to take looks at it. And that's just a realistic thing. But you guys let me know what you guys think. What do you think about everything that we talked about? What do you think about the Trae Young trade? What do you think about Coby White being here, taking the place of the starting point guard and, scooting everybody else down a spot? What do you think about the Malik Monk buzz? I think it would be perfect. And what do you think that we should do with Zubac? There are so many questions that need answers, and I'm not the Godfather. I'm not a sorcerer. I don't have all the answers. But maybe you guys have some ideas. So if you have some ideas, be sure to leave those down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like it. And if you did and you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you here at Clip Gang. But that's going to do it for this video. Y'all be easy. Y'all stay sleazy. And as always, keep it capital P. I'm going to catch y'all in the next one. Y'all be smooth. Peace.